we have been telling you about a body parts found in the trunk of a Tesla owned by the singer David. We now know who the victim is in this case, and there are a lot of the photos that we found of David and a tattoo that he has, very, very interesting.
So we found photos from last September where he has on his pointer finger of his right hand
the same finger as her.
The same exact finger, the exact same.
When David's Tesla was dragged into a Los Angeles tow yard, nobody could have imagined the nightmare hidden inside. At first, it looked like just another abandoned luxury car in Hollywood. Once investigators popped that front trunk, the story turned into something far darker. What they found inside didn't just spark headlines. It sent the FBI storming into his Hollywood Hills mansion, uncovering secrets that would rattle the entire music world. It all came crashing down on September 8, 2025. Workers at Hollywood Tow on North Mansfield Avenue had been complaining about a foul stench coming from a black Tesla that had been sitting there for days. Neighbors claimed that the car had been left abandoned on the street for over a month. At first, staff thought it was just spoiled food or maybe a dead animal. But when authorities opened it up, the truth was beyond gruesome.
We still don't have any answers. So many questions we still ponder. The very basic one is, what happened to Celeste? What is the story behind Celeste? Here she is, a runaway, but clearly around a lot of people that knew she was a runaway. This little girl did not deserve that, runaway or not, whether she was with this, adult man or not, regardless if it was a 5 to 6 year difference, which some people try to justify, it's still wrong.
Severely decomposed human remains stuffed inside the vehicle trunk. The Tesla was registered to none other than David Anthony Burke, better known to fans as D4vd, the 20-year-old prodigy who'd taken the internet and music industry by storm. Overnight, what should have been the peak of his stardom turned into one of the most chilling criminal investigations Hollywood has ever seen. To understand the magnitude of this bombshell, you've got to look at David's insane come-up. Born on March 28, 2005 in Queens, New York, David later moved with his family to Houston, Texas. His path to fame wasn't like other artists chasing record deals or studio time. He started off as just another teenager grinding Fortnite, uploading slick montage videos to YouTube. Music wasn't even the plan at first, but his career flipped after hitting a breaking point that would have crushed most people. That crisis ended up being the spark that launched him from struggling gamer to streaming giant with billions of plays.
Now know who the victim is in this case, and there are a lot of twists and turns.
Yes, the victim, as it turns out, is a 15-year-old girl named Celeste Rivas. And Celeste Rivas had gone missing about a year ago.
And here's the wildest part. David didn't climb the charts the traditional way. No expensive studios, no big-name producers, no industry machine backing him. He crafted his sound straight from his bedroom, rewriting the rules of how a new wave of artists could rise to superstardom. David's rise was nothing short of staggering. His breakout track, Romantic Homicide, didn't just make waves. It became a worldwide anthem, racking up over 1.6 billion streams and cementing him as the voice of a new generation. By 2025, he wasn't just chasing fame. He was living the dream. Signed to Darkroom/Interscope Records, dropping his debut album Withered, which peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 200, and headlining a sold-out world tour across continents. Thousands of fans screaming his name every night, arenas packed to capacity.
David was also supposed to release the deluxe version of his album Withered today. But again, all promotion for his music has been paused, so the album is not being released for obvious reasons. He was also previously selling bloody t-shirt merch on his website, and it has since been removed.
David was officially untouchable, or so it seemed. But while he was basking in the spotlight, investigators were quietly piecing together a nightmare. Just 9 days after the horrific discovery inside his Tesla, the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office dropped a bombshell that would turn his career upside down. The remains were identified as 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a girl who had vanished from Lake Elsinore, California, the year before. Celeste had gone missing on April 5th, 2024, when she was only 13 years old. Lake Elsinore, a quiet suburb about 70 miles southeast of Los Angeles, was where she lived with her family. Her disappearance left her community shaken, but nobody could have predicted this devastating ending.
David was also previously scheduled to attend a Grammy Museum event on September 24th, but his name has been removed from the Grammy Museum website. David's label, Interscope Records, is also halting all music promotion for him, out of respect of the seriousness of the situation and the ongoing investigation.
The breakthrough in identifying her came from a chilling detail: a small SH tattoo in red ink etched onto her right index finger. That one piece of ink matched descriptions from her missing person report, giving forensic experts the confirmation they needed despite the body's advanced state of decomposition in California's heat. The revelation shattered her family. Through a GoFundMe page set up to cover funeral expenses, loved ones described Celeste as a beautiful, smart, funny young lady and a beloved daughter, sister, cousin, and friend. The fundraiser painted her as full of life, someone with endless potential, now cruelly taken too soon. But the heartbreak didn't stop there, because when the media pressed further, a disturbing connection to David himself came to light. The most jaw-dropping detail came from Celeste's own mother, who revealed that before disappearing, her daughter told her she had a boyfriend, and his name was David. That one detail, the victim's name matching the superstar whose Tesla she was found in, blew the entire case wide open. Suddenly, this wasn't just a mystery. It was a full-blown scandal with global eyes watching every move investigators made. And then came another twist that sent the story into overdrive. The LAPD's elite robbery homicide division swooped in and took charge. This is the same powerhouse unit that handles LA's most explosive cases: celebrity passing, organized crime, and the kind of investigations that never leave the headline. Their takeover was the clearest signal yet. Authorities weren't treating this as some tragic accident. They were digging in like it was a high-profile criminal case.
David has not publicly addressed the ongoing investigation.
But solving it was no easy task. The remains were in an advanced state of decomposition, which made it almost impossible to pin down the exact cause or time of end. California's relentless heat had only worsened things, forcing forensic experts to fight through a maze of complications during autopsy and toxicology testing. Then came the question haunting everyone.
Canceled the remaining dates on his U.S. tour amid the Celeste Rivas Hernandez investigation. Sources tell TMZ that David's camp made the decision to cancel the remaining 2 shows on Thursday.
Celeste had been missing for nearly 18 months, vanishing in April 2024, only to resurface in September 2025 inside David's car. Where was she during all that time? Who was she with? And how did her story end inside the trunk of a superstar's Tesla? Investigators had more puzzles to sort out. The Tesla wasn't David's only ride. He owned multiple luxury vehicles, and insiders claimed several people had access to his cars. On top of that, David's touring schedule gave him a built-in alibi for certain weeks. When Celeste's body was found on September 8th, David was out on the road, performing to sold-out crowds across the country. That left authorities scrambling to piece together a clear timeline. When exactly had Celeste died, and how long had she been left in that car? As those chilling questions spread through the headlines, the entertainment world was left reeling in disbelief. David was once the poster child of the digital dream, a kid who proved you didn't need million-dollar studios or industry gatekeepers to change the music game. Millions were inspired by his grind, his raw creativity, and his rise from gaming content creator to global superstar. But now, that same fairy tale had turned into a true crime nightmare, with his name tied to one of the most disturbing investigations the entertainment world had ever seen. The burning question echoed everywhere. How did 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez end up lifeless in David's Tesla? And what part, if any, did he play in her tragic fate? That question only grew louder when the FBI made their most jaw-dropping move yet. Just 10 days after the gruesome discovery, the case hit a dramatic new peak. On September 18, 2025, the LAPD rolled up on a Hollywood Hills mansion linked to David and launched a massive raid. This wasn't some quiet knock at the door. This was a full-scale forensic sweep, a military-style operation with detectives and evidence techs swarming the property. It marked the single biggest escalation since Celeste's body was uncovered, and the timing couldn't have been more explosive. Here's where it got even messier. David didn't technically own the mansion. It was being rented by his Interscope manager, but receipts and records showed David had been living and moving in and out of that house regularly over the past year. And if that wasn't suspicious enough, the mansion was only a few blocks away from where his Tesla was abandoned. That was no random coincidence. It was the missing puzzle piece investigators had been waiting for. Neighbors were quick to back it up too. Multiple locals said they'd seen the black Tesla with Texas plates parked outside for long stretches of time. Some even remembered it sitting there with a dent, looking like it hadn't moved in weeks. Those eyewitness details gave detectives a rough window of when the car might have last been at the house and when it was finally ditched. The raid itself kicked off in the late evening hours, clearly a strategic choice to catch anyone off guard. LAPD homicide detectives, forensic experts, and specialized units stormed the scene, making sure nothing slipped through the cracks. Forensic techs swarmed the Hollywood Hills mansion, combing through every inch of the property for hours. The timing of the raid wasn't random. Late-night searches give investigators the upper hand, letting them work without curious neighbors or the media breathing down their necks. And this wasn't just a routine sweep. The level of intensity showed investigators weren't just fishing for clues. They were hunting for signs of violence. The biggest giveaway? Luminol testing. Detectives sprayed the chemical across floors, carpets, drains, even spots you'd never think to check. Under ultraviolet light, luminol glows when it touches even microscopic traces of blood, sometimes long after someone's tried to clean it away. The fact that they went full scale with it suggested something chilling. Investigators suspected this house might have been ground zero for what happened to Celeste, or at least where critical evidence was hidden, and the haul they left with only fueled more speculation. Detectives marched out carrying evidence bags, a full desktop computer, and multiple electronic devices. Phones, hard drives, laptops, these weren't just props. In today's world, digital evidence can tell investigators more than a fingerprint ever could. Why? Because electronics keep secrets. Deleted files can be resurrected. Private browsing sessions can be exposed. Communication logs, GPS locations, hidden messages, all of it can be dragged back into the light. And that computer they seized? That could be the key to piecing together Celeste's final months, her interactions, and possibly even the truth about what went down behind closed doors. Even if someone thought they deleted it all, digital forensics can bring the receipts, and that's exactly what investigators were banking on. Forensic teams weren't just after laptops and phones. They had their sights set on every digital trace tied to that mansion. Experts with cutting-edge tools were ready to dig into hard drives, pull up deleted data, and recover anything hidden in storage devices. Sources even revealed that investigators were on the hunt for security footage, knowing that Hollywood Hills homes often come loaded with high-end surveillance systems. If those cameras caught who was coming and going, they could expose exactly who was inside the house and when. The sweep didn't stop at the front door either. Detectives spread across the property, checking driveways, garages, and outdoor spaces where evidence might have been stashed or dumped. Since the mansion was just blocks away from where David's Tesla had been abandoned, they were desperate to draw a line between that house and the car where Celeste's remains were found. And here's the chilling focus. Police sources admitted they were investigating whether Celeste herself had ever been inside that residence. Had she been staying there at some point during the 18 months she was missing? Had things gone down in those very rooms? Investigators weren't leaving anything to chance. Crime scene techs went far beyond the obvious, probing plumbing lines, air vents, and hidden nooks where evidence could have been stuffed away or accidentally left behind. The level of detail screamed one thing loud and clear. Detectives were treating that house as a potential primary crime scene. Then came the timing twist. The raid happened just a day after David abruptly canceled his Seattle show, and right as he was scrapping the rest of his U.S. tour. That wasn't a coincidence. It looked like investigators had been carefully waiting for the perfect moment to strike, knowing he'd be off balance. And none of this happened without serious backing. For a judge to greenlight such an invasive search on a high-profile figure, investigators had to lay out some heavy evidence, enough to prove that this mansion likely held the answers to Celeste's disappearance in passing. The approval alone showed how deep this case had already cut. The fact that a judge even approved such a sweeping warrant meant investigators weren't guessing. They had already stacked up real evidence tying that mansion to the case. And the fallout was instant. As word of the late-night raid spread across social media and entertainment outlets, the public's perception shifted in real time. This was no longer being whispered about as a mysterious tragedy. Authorities were now treating it like a homicide investigation, with David squarely in the spotlight. The impact was devastating. Just days earlier, David was celebrated as one of music's brightest young stars, a global sensation with billions of streams and a rabid fan base hanging on his every move. But those images of detectives marching out of his mansion with computers and evidence bags flipped the script completely. Overnight, the world started asking if their idol was hiding a sinister double life. The industry didn't hesitate either. Interscope Records slammed the brakes on every promotion tied to David's music. Major brands, like Crocs and Hollister, immediately cut ties, suspending partnerships that once plastered his face across global campaigns. Nobody wanted to be connected to the storm surrounding him. It was a brutal reminder of how fast the entertainment machine turns its back when scandal strikes. The very companies that once championed David's rise were now scrambling to erase his name, all while the investigation dug deeper. Meanwhile, the evidence seized during the raid was funneled into labs for painstaking analysis. Digital forensic experts got to work dissecting his devices, pulling data, tracing communication trails, resurrecting deleted files. At the same time, biological samples were being tested for DNA, searching for any proof that could tie Celeste to the residents and ultimately to David himself. The raid left fans, critics, and insiders stunned. What was once a feel-good story about a self-made superstar was now unraveling into one of the darkest scandals the industry had ever seen. And everyone was waiting to see what the investigation would uncover next. The fallout from the FBI's raid didn't just shake the music world, it shattered it. Fans, executives, and even fellow artists were left in disbelief, scrambling for answers to questions nobody wanted to face. And right at the center of it all was David, whose once meteoric rise now looked like it had come crashing down in real time. Silence, death. Just days before the raid on September 15th, David had been hyping his tour on social media, but after investigators stormed the Hollywood Hills mansion, his accounts went dark. No new content. Comments disabled. The superstar who built his fame on being accessible and always connected with fans had vanished from the online world overnight, and people noticed. The collapse only snowballed from there. What was supposed to be a career-defining world tour celebrating his debut album Withered turned into a nightmare of cancellations, refunds, and shattered fan expectations. Venues dropped him one by one, and disappointed crowds were left holding useless tickets. The financial losses ran into the millions, not just from shows, but from merchandise sales and sponsorships that evaporated instantly. And it wasn't just concerts. The Grammy Museum had quietly lined up David for a major appearance, a milestone moment that would have cemented him as one of the industry's rising legends. But once the scandal exploded, his name was scrubbed from their website like it had never been there at all. Corporate America wasted no time running for cover. Brands that once plastered David's face across their name, Crocs, Hollister, and more, pulled the plug immediately, yanking promotional materials and suspending partnerships without hesitation. The ship was moved and predictable. Nobody wanted to risk being tainted by the scandal. Even Interscope Records made moves that turned heads. They pulled his infamous bloody t-shirt merch from shelves and online stores. What once seemed like edgy artistic branding suddenly looked sinister in the wake of the investigation. Now, every piece of his image, every lyric, every visual choice was being re-examined under a microscope, no longer as art, but as potential evidence. The David that fans thought they knew had disappeared, replaced by a chilling question mark that hung over the entire industry. While David stayed completely silent, the investigation was only heating up behind closed doors. The evidence scooped up in the Hollywood Hills raid was spread across multiple labs, where experts were tearing into it piece by piece. Digital forensic teams were grinding day and night, pulling hidden files, cracking into devices, and recovering deleted data, while biological samples were being tested for DNA that could tie the mansion or its occupant directly to Celeste. But it wasn't just about David anymore. Detectives widened their net, combing through his entire inner circle. collaborators, friends, associates, anyone who had access to his vehicles or had been spotted around the mansion was now under the microscope. Investigators wanted to know who else might have known something about Celeste's disappearance, and who might have played a role in keeping secrets. One name that stood out was his longtime gaming associate, Jason the Ween. At first, Jason had rushed online to defend David, insisting he couldn't have been involved. But as the investigation grew, even he was facing uncomfortable questions. The same circle that once boosted David's rise to stardom was now being dissected as potential links in a much darker chain. Meanwhile, Celeste's family was enduring unimaginable grief. As headlines obsessed over David's career collapsed, her loved ones were just trying to bury their daughter and find peace. A GoFundMe set up to cover funeral costs pulled in significant donations, showing the outpouring of sympathy from strangers who saw her as more than just a headline. She was a child whose life had been stolen too soon. The tragedy also forced people to look at the bigger picture. David's rise had once been celebrated as proof that social media could turn ordinary kids into global icons. But now, the same story was being flipped into a cautionary tale about the dangerous power dynamics between famous artists and their young fans. Public opinion had swung hard. What started as admiration had morphed into suspicion, anger, and a demand for accountability. The court of public opinion didn't wait for a trial. It had already slammed down its verdict. Social media was flooded with outrage, with countless users demanding justice for Celeste and calling for accountability. While fans argued online, investigators were zeroing in on hard digital evidence, and one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle came from David's own car. Tesla vehicles are loaded with GPS tracking and recording systems that could map out every movement, every stop, every route, and possibly reveal exactly when and how Celeste's body ended up there. But the Tesla was just the beginning. Detectives were also combing through cell tower pings, private messages, social media DMs, and electronic records to stitch together a full timeline of David's whereabouts and connections. The LAPD was following every thread, no matter how small, in an effort to build the clearest picture of events leading up to Celeste's tragic passing. And yet, looming over it all was the biggest question. What would happen to David? Would he face formal charges? If somehow cleared, could he ever rebuild his career? Or was his name already permanently tainted? And even more, could the music industry ever separate the art from the allegations when the scandal was this big? Adding fuel to the fire was David's chilling silence. In an era where celebrities rush to social media to defend themselves or spin narratives, his total disappearance from the spotlight was deafening. Whether it was because of legal advice or personal choice, that silence only made things look darker. And people noticed. The entire saga became more than just a criminal case. It was a reflection of the messy triangle between celebrity culture, social media, and justice itself. The same platforms that skyrocketed David to fame were now ripping apart every detail of his past, turning the investigation into a spectacle playing out in two courts, one inside the system and one online. No matter how the case ends, one truth is undeniable. The David scandal has already changed everything. What started as a feel-good story about digital age success has now twisted into a chilling warning about the dangers of fame colliding with youth culture and reckless ambition. The entertainment industry, law enforcement, and the public are all being forced to rethink how social media can blur the lines between stardom and scandal. And what happens when vulnerable lives get caught in the middle? Celeste's tragic fate turned a superstar's dream into a cautionary tale that the music industry will never forget. A family has been left shattered forever, and the world is still holding its breath, waiting for answers to the questions that have shaken the very foundation of modern fame. Thank you for watching. If this story grabbed you, make sure to drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video so more people can see what's really going on. And don't forget, click one of the boxes on your screen to check out more stories just like this. See you on the next one.